Imagine you are walking through the absolute heart of the Australian outback. The sun is an uncompromising, blinding anvil in the sky, baking the red earth beneath your boots. There is a specific scent out here on the Australian continent, a mixture of crushed eucalyptus leaves, bone-dry spinifex grass, and the faint, metallic tang of dust that has not seen rain in months. It is quiet. That deep, ringing silence unique to places where human civilization is nothing more than a temporary afterthought. Then, you hear it. A low, rhythmic thudding that vibrates through the soles of your shoes before it even registers in your ears. From the shimmering heat haze of the acacia scrub, a towering silhouette emerges. It moves with a strange, bound-forward momentum that your mind struggles to process if you are seeing it for the first time. It is too upright for a quadruped, too fluid for a mammalian giant, and seemingly engineered for a landscape that would break any other creature. This is the red kangaroo, Osfranta rufus, the undisputed boxing titan of the ancient Australian bush, and today we are tracing its journey from a microscopic speck in the pouch to the final. Defiant stand of an outback legend, the red kangaroo has existed on the Australian continent in its modern form for roughly 2 million years. While humanity was still experimenting with primitive stone tools in the Old World, and while massive ice sheets were carving out the valleys of the Northern Hemisphere, this marsupial was already perfecting the art of survival in the arid dead centre of Australia. It is an evolutionary masterpiece of energy conservation, a creature that literally turns the laws of physics into a locomotive advantage. Nature does not redesign what already operates at peak efficiency, and this animal has been dominating the vast, sun-bleached plains of inland Australia without needing a single structural upgrade since the Pleistocene. Let us begin with the sheer physical presence of this animal, because in the harsh reality of the Australian outback, scale is not just a visual metric, it is your biological armour. An adult male red kangaroo, or a boomer as he is known out here in Australia, can stand well over 2 meters tall when he straightens his spine to assess a threat. That places his gaze directly at eye level with a grown human, looking straight at you across a horizontal plane of muscle and fur. He can weigh anywhere between 70 and 90 kilograms. Exceptional individuals bucking the averages have been recorded at over 100 kilograms of dense bone and explosive sinew, larger and heavier than many professional rugby players. The females, affectionately called blue flyers due to their stunning smoky blue coats, are noticeably smaller, usually topping out at around 35 to 40 kilograms. Yet, what they lack in raw mass, they more than make up for in sheer, blinding speed. This is the largest living marsupial on planet Earth. Not in the fossil records, but right now, breathing the dusty air of the Australian continent today. Their kingdom is vast, yet brutally specific. Red kangaroos claim the semi-arid and arid heart of Australia as their absolute domain, spanning across the Northern Territory savannas, the red deserts of South Australia, the rugged expanses of Western Australia, and the sweeping plains of New South Wales. Their geographic reach covers millions of square kilometres, an area larger than Western Europe, making it one of the most expansive natural territories for any large herbivore on Earth. Despite the immense scale of this habitat, their survival is a delicate balancing act. While the total population across Australia fluctuates dramatically based on the erratic boom and bust cycles of drought and rain, often ranging from 10 to 20 million individuals, their numbers can collapse by over half during prolonged dry spells. Today they face the creeping pressures of pastoral expansion, shifting water tables, and the intensifying heat waves driven by global climate shifts. Their ancient borders are changing, and they are entirely unaware of the invisible lines being drawn around them. The climate governing the life of an Australian red kangaroo is one of unforgiving extremes. It is a world of endless sun, where daytime temperatures routinely soar between 35 and 45 degrees Celsius for months on end. The landscape consists of endless open shrublands, flat alluvial plains, and iconic sand dunes anchored by resilient spinifex. This is not the dense, sheltering bush of the coast. This is the wide-open terrain of a master long-distance traveller. It is a space where there is nowhere to hide from the sun, and frankly, nowhere to hide from rivals. In these modern times, an adult boomer roaming the Australian outback has very few natural predators. Aside from packs of dingoes or the occasional wedge-tailed eagle targeting the young, a fully grown male stands at the apex of his specific ecological community. The primary forces that claim his life are severe dehydration, structural injuries sustained in territorial battles, and the hand of man. To truly understand this animal, one must realize it evolved to conquer distance and heat, not to flee from predators. It does not possess an instinct for blind panic or frantic retreat. Its entire neurobiological framework is geared toward calculated movement, endurance, and deliberate response. Now, let us travel back to the very beginning of this cycle. How does a red kangaroo first enter this scorched Australian world? It is a narrative that begins with a reproductive strategy so bizarre and brilliant it sounds like science fiction. Around the transition into the breeding windows, which can occur at any time of the year in Australia, whenever food is plentiful, the local mobs begin to fracture as dominant males assert their authority. When multiple boomers cross paths near a female in estrus, the confrontation is spectacular. They do not instantly resort to lethal violence, but the physical stakes are incredibly high. Two massive males will stand upright on their hind legs, balancing their entire weight on the thick, muscular tripod of their tails. They look like two heavyweight prize-fighters locked in a prehistoric embrace, using their heavily muscled forelimbs to grapple, push, and swat at each other's chests. The true danger comes when one leans completely back on his tail and launches a dual-legged kick directly into his opponent's abdomen, armed with a long, dagger-like claw on each central toe. The victor wins the temporary right to pass on his genes, while the defeated boomer slinks away into the scrub, his chest covered in superficial scratches but his life intact. Yet, it is the female's reproductive biology that holds the true genius of survival on the Australian continent. Red kangaroos possess the extraordinary ability known as embryonic diapause. A female can mate while she already has a joey developing inside her pouch, but she can effectively put the newly fertilized embryo into a state of suspended animation. If the Australian outback is gripped by a catastrophic drought, her body holds that microscopic spark of life completely frozen at a stage of just a few dozen cells. If the current joey dies or leaves the pouch, or if a sudden downpour causes the green feed to flush across the plains, her hormones signal the embryo to wake up and resume development. It is an ultimate biological insurance policy against an unpredictable continent. Nature has engineered a literal pause button for life, ensuring that the lineage of the red kangaroo is never more than a few weeks away from restarting, no matter how hostile the Australian environment becomes. Once the chemical signal to wake up ripples through the female's body, the miracle of marsupial birth takes place in the shade of a lonely mulga tree. What happens next is one of the most astonishing journeys in the animal kingdom, occurring just 33 days after development resumes. The creature that emerges from the female's birth canal is not a fully formed animal, but a tiny, pink, hairless organism barely the size of a single jelly bean. It weighs less than a single gram. It has no eyes, no hind legs to speak of, and no internal immune system. Yet, this microscopic pioneer possesses two vital tools: a highly developed sense of smell and robust, clawed forelimbs. Relying entirely on blind instinct and the scent trail left by its mother, the tiny pink speck begins an epic trek across a vertical wilderness of fur, crawling upward from the cloaca toward the safety of the pouch. The mother does not assist it. She merely licks a path through her fur to ease its journey. For 3 to 5 agonizing minutes, the embryonic joey battles gravity across the expanse of its mother's abdomen. A single gust of dry Australian wind could end its life, but its gripping instinct is flawless. It reaches the rim, tumbles inside the pouch, and immediately locks its mouth onto one of the 4 internal teats. The teat swells inside the joey's mouth, fusing them together in a living pipeline of sustenance. Inside this highly specialized, elastic nursery, the joey undergoes an incredible transformation. The pouch of an Australian red kangaroo is not just a simple skin pocket. It is a dynamic, temperature-regulated biodome. For the first 3 months of its life, the young marsupial remains permanently fused to the teat, receiving a specific formulation of milk that is incredibly rich in antibodies and perfectly tailored for early structural growth. As the months roll on, the joey begins to sprout a fine layer of iconic blue-grey or soft rufous fur. Its massive hind legs begin to elongate, and its dark, curious eyes open to the dim light of its enclosed world. By the time it reaches 5 to 6 months of age, the joey is heavy enough to cause the pouch to sag low toward the ground. It begins to poke its head out into the bright, blinding glare of the Australian outback, nibbling tentative mouthfuls of fresh grass whenever its mother bends down to feed, around the 235th day of its life. The joey takes its first monumental leap of faith into the outside world. It tumbles out of the pouch onto the dusty red earth, its long legs trembling under its own weight like a newborn foal. This initial foray lasts only a few minutes before a sudden noise sends it scrambling head first back into the safety of its mother's pocket, leaving its oversized hind legs dangling comically out of the top. This marks the beginning of the transitional phase. For the next few months, the joey is a joyfully chaotic presence in the mob, bouncing around its mother's flanks, learning how to groom its fur and identifying which native plants are safe to eat. However, the mother's reproductive engine never stops. While this older joey is exploring the grass, she may have a second, microscopic embryo frozen in diapause inside her womb, and a third, tiny newborn permanently attached to a separate teat inside the pouch. Amazingly, her body can produce 2 entirely different compositions of milk simultaneously from adjacent teats, one high-fat mix for the active joey outside, and one high-protein mix for the tiny infant inside. It is a level of metabolic multitasking unmatched anywhere else on the Australian continent. By the time the young kangaroo reaches a year of age, it is permanently evicted from the pouch. It has simply grown too large for the mother to carry without compromising her own speed and agility. Though it still nurses from the outside for a few more months, it must now face the harsh realities of life on the ground. Unlike the young of many predatory species, there is no formal schooling or lengthy apprenticeship for a red kangaroo. Its survival manual is hardwired into its DNA. The primary strategy for a young kangaroo during these vulnerable adolescent years is to stay close to the protection of the larger mob. In the wide open spaces of inland Australia, safety resides in numbers. A lone juvenile is an easy target for a roaming pack of dingoes. But a cohesive mob provides dozens of pairs of hypersensitive ears and eyes scanning the horizon for danger. Growth for a red kangaroo is a lifelong process that slows significantly after maturity but never truly grinds to a complete halt. During that critical first year outside the pouch, a young kangaroo will shoot up to about 60 or 70 centimeters in height. By its third year, a young male will have achieved the lean, athletic build of an adult, standing roughly 1.5 meters tall. Sexual maturity arrives at around 2 years for females and 3 years for males, though a young male has virtually no chance of successfully claiming a mate until he has spent several more years building the massive upper body musculature required to win a territorial boxing match. A male does not reach his true, intimidating peak until he is roughly 7 to 10 years old. In the unforgiving crucible of the wild Australian bush, a red kangaroo can expect to live for up to 15 or 20 years, though prolonged droughts often cut those figures short. To look upon a massive, battle-scarred boomer standing tall in the shade of a desert oak is to look upon an individual that has successfully navigated decades of extreme climate shifts, survived dust storms, doved predators, and outlasted the most brutal environmental challenges Australia can throw at him now. Let us delve into the specific biomechanical and dietary secrets that elevate the red kangaroo from a simple grazing animal into an absolute legend of evolutionary engineering. The red kangaroo is an obligate herbivore, consuming a diet consisting almost exclusively of native green grasses, succulent forbs, and the hardy leaves of chenopod shrubs like saltbush and bluebush. Because these plants are incredibly fibrous, tough, and often laden with abrasive silica particles, the kangaroo has developed a continuous tooth replacement system known as molar progression. As the front teeth are worn down to the gums by the gritty diet, they eventually fall out, and the entire row of back molars slowly marches forward to take their place, ensuring the animal always has a sharp, functional grinding surface. This digestive strategy is highly efficient, allowing them to extract every drop of moisture and nutrition from plants that other herbivores would find completely unpalatable. They can survive for months without ever tasting open water, drawing all the hydration they need from the morning dew and the internal fluids of the resilient flora of the great Australian interior. What truly sets the red kangaroo apart from every other large mammal on the planet is its extraordinary method of locomotion, hopping. To the uninitiated, bounding across the landscape on two legs looks like an incredibly exhausting way to move, but mathematically and biologically, it is a masterstroke of efficiency. The secret lies in the anatomy of their massive hind limbs, specifically the thick, elastic Achilles tendons that run down the back of their legs. When an Australian red kangaroo hits the ground, these tendons act exactly like giant mechanical springs. The kinetic energy of the downward impact is captured, stored within the elastic tissue, and then instantly released to launch the animal upward and forward into its next stride. This process is known as elastic strain energy. Remarkably, as a red kangaroo accelerates from a leisurely hop to a high-speed sprint across the Australian continent, it does not actually expend more energy or consume more oxygen. The faster it bounces, the more efficiently the bounce works, allowing it to cover immense distances at speeds of up to 60 kilometers per hour without utterly exhausting its cardiovascular system. This bouncing motion also solves a major respiratory challenge that plagues other running animals. The internal organs of the kangaroo, particularly its heavy liver, move up and down within the abdominal cavity in perfect sync with its hopping rhythm. As the kangaroo lands, the momentum pushes the organs forward against the diaphragm, automatically forcing air out of the lungs. As it leaps back into the air, the organs slide downward, pulling the diaphragm open and drawing a fresh breath into the chest. The act of hopping literally pumps the animal's lungs for free. This allows a red kangaroo to travel effortlessly across thousands of kilometres of arid Australian terrain in search of erratic rainfall, utilising a fraction of the energy that a quadrupedal mammal like a horse or a deer would require to cover the same distance. However, finding food in the vast expanse of inland Australia is only half the battle. The other half is surviving the oppressive, radiating heat of the midday sun. Being a mammal, the red kangaroo must maintain a stable internal body temperature, but it cannot afford to waste precious water through profuse sweating. Instead, they have developed a highly unique behavioural adaptation: arm licking. The forelimbs of a red kangaroo are laced with a dense, highly specialised network of superficial blood vessels located just beneath the skin. When the ambient temperature begins to climb past 40 degrees Celsius, the kangaroo will find a patch of shade, sit back on its haunches, and thoroughly coat its forelimbs in a layer of saliva. As the dry Australian breeze passes over the wet fur, the saliva evaporates, directly cooling the blood circulating through the underlying vessels before it pumps back into the core of the body. This targeted evaporative cooling system can lower the animal's core temperature within minutes, allowing it to preserve its internal hydration during the most punishing hours of the Outback afternoon, when the sun finally dips below the horizon and the baked earth begins to cool. The true social dynamics of the red kangaroo come to light. These animals do not live in isolation. They form fluid, loose-knit social groups known as mobs, which can number anywhere from a dozen to over 100 individuals. There is no rigid, permanent leadership within a mob. Rather, it is a fission-fusion society where individuals constantly join or leave based on the availability of food and water. Within these groups, the dominant boomers maintain an unstable peace through a clearly defined social hierarchy determined strictly by size and physical prowess. A large male will routinely assert his dominance over smaller rivals by indulging in display behaviours such as high standing, where he rises to his full height, arches his back, and stiffens his forelimbs, or by vigorously rubbing his chest gland against the trunk of a nearby mulga tree to leave a pungent scent mark. If a younger male refuses to acknowledge this authority, the situation escalates into a formal boxing match. These bouts are highly ritualised and surprisingly disciplined affairs. The two competitors will face each other squarely, trading rapid, open-pawed slaps to the head and neck, testing the strength of each other's shoulders. The real violence begins when they attempt to lock arms, each trying to manipulate the other into a position where they can deliver a devastating kick. Balancing perfectly on the thick muscle of his tail, a dominant boomer can launch both of his massive hind legs forward with incredible velocity. The central toe claw can easily slice through skin and muscle, but to protect themselves from these disemboweling strikes, Adult males have evolved an incredibly thick, leathery layer of skin across their abdomens, acting as a natural suit of armor. These bouts are exhausting and can last for over 20 minutes, ending only when one male accepts defeat, lowers his stance, and hops away into the safety of the Australian scrub. As dawn breaks over the Australian horizon, the true sensory world of the red kangaroo becomes apparent. Their survival on this flat, featureless continent is entirely dependent on a highly sophisticated sensory apparatus that operates on a completely different frequency to our own. Their long, elegant ears can rotate independently through a full 180-degree arc, capturing the low-frequency vibrations of a cracking twig or the distant rumble of an approaching vehicle from kilometers away. Their vision is perfectly attuned to detecting the slightest hint of motion across a vast, horizontal axis, making them exceptionally difficult to surprise in the open plains of the outback. Yet, it is their relationship with the modern Australian landscape that defines their future. Today, the red kangaroo stands as both a cultural icon and a point of environmental contention across Australia. They are protected by law, yet managed through strictly regulated commercial harvesting programs designed to balance their numbers with the needs of agriculture and pastoral lands. When encountering these magnificent marsupials in the wild, understanding observation ethics is paramount for any responsible naturalist. The red kangaroo is an animal built on a foundation of energy conservation. Forcing a kangaroo to flee through careless approach or sudden movements robs it of the vital calories and hydration it needs to survive the punishing outback heat. Approaching a mob requires patience, quiet movements, and a profound respect for their personal space. If a dominant boomer stands flat-footed, fixes his gaze directly upon you, and begins to scratch his chest nervously, you have crossed an invisible line. It is a clear signal to stop, lower your profile, and slowly back away, allowing the animal to maintain its composure and peace. Ultimately, the red kangaroo is far more than just a unique creature jumping across the desert. It is a living bridge to the ancient heart of the Australian continent. It is a testament to what is possible when evolution is given millions of years to perfect a design for an environment of absolute extremes. When you look upon a great red boomer resting quietly under the shade of a ghost gum, you are looking at a system that has outlasted ice ages, survived catastrophic droughts, and learned to conquer the tyranny of distance without making a single unnecessary movement. It is a masterpiece of biological engineering, an enduring symbol of resilience,